Okay, welcome everyone to this Institution of Environmental Sciences webinar, Today's Possibilities with Digital EIA, Practical Case Studies. This webinar is part of our evening webinar series exploring digital EIA and innovative EIA projects. I'm delighted to be joined by two expert speakers today, Paul Eijssen, Strategic Consultant at Royal HaskoningDHV, and Tom Moekotte, who is a product owner. After their presentation, you'll have the opportunity to ask questions, so please do submit these in the Q&A option at the bottom of your screen at any point during the presentation, and these will then be read out on your behalf. During the Q&A session, you can also raise your hand if you would like to ask the questions yourself. This webinar is being recorded and will be made available on the IES YouTube channel and website after today. Thank you so much for logging in, and thanks very much to our speakers. Paul, I'll now hand over to you.
Okay, thanks. Let's see if I can share my screen. Hopefully you can see something. Yeah, okay,
yes,
good.
That's all showing.
Okay, welcome to this webinar about digital EIA. The focus in this webinar is mainly about where we currently stand in applying digital environmental impact assessment. But before I say what we want to discuss in the next 20 minutes, I would like to briefly introduce Tom Moekotte and myself. Let's see. Tom will do the second part of this presentation. Tom is the product owner of our digital reporting and participation tool. This means that he is strongly involved in the use of the tool, but also in the further development, and he also provides trainings. In addition to his role as product owner, Tom is a cybersecurity advisor. My name is Paul Eijssen, and I'm a strategic consultant for impact assessment. And from that role, I started developing the digital EIA, and I'm also business owner of what we call iReport within RHDHV. In addition, I am involved in information management within RHDHV. What are we going to show you? Well, we start briefly with the reason why we started with digital impact assessment. I will then show two examples where this has been applied in practice in formal proceedings. For the translation to your own practice, we show what is possible in a demo environment, especially with some examples of the power of visualizations in complex studies like EIA. We regularly give webinars for organizations, and of course, we also get a lot of questions about how something like this is set up. And therefore, we end with a first impression of the backend of this platform, and that hopefully within 20 minutes. The examples we show are based on the platform we use within RHDHV in terms of functionality. Similar platforms are also developed by other companies. We have been developing since 2015, and we now have several projects in progress. What we show today can also be used by others. The product is available in the market. And with this introduction, let's get started. Was environmental impact assessment always a full-fledged aid to decision-making? I think sometimes yes, sometimes less, and sometimes not. And that can be for a variety of reasons. One of these is the accessibility of sometimes complex information, or of less complex information made complex by the extensive text and the huge piles of paper that we produce. Many a discussion has taken place over the last decades to improve this. Back to basic, better scoping, proportionate EIA, but also the request to use a lot more visual information to keep things understandable and appealing. In my opinion, thick reports are hardly read by the decision makers. And then one has to rely on the summary and the input of specialists for decision making. Citizens and other stakeholders are difficult to involve or lose trust due to information that is difficult to access. And that can be done differently. How many possibilities do all these digital developments offer for EIA? I think a lot. The same text can be presented in layers, only the specialists go a layer deeper. But the common thread of the story remains easy for the reader to follow. That was not only our conclusion based on a pilot project that we did together with the Ministry of Infrastructure and Water Management in the Netherlands, but was also the conclusion of the Independent Dutch Commission for EIA, the NCEA, which we had asked for formal advice regarding the pilot. What also helps is to replace a lot of text with visual information, interactive where possible and relevant. Think of 2D and 3D GIS, 3D models or interactive tables, dynamic graphs, video, 360 degrees images. All these techniques exist, are fairly easy to apply, and can make the digital EIA much more attractive. A bit more about this will be shown by Tom in a minute. At the EIA conference in 2015 in Florence, the digital era was the theme, and the EIA community was still at the start of this development. Now projects have started digitally, and the parties involved are starting to see the advantage and get used to the idea. Also outside the Netherlands, by the way, and with initiatives from various companies and organizations. And from a digital report, it goes to a digital process in which digital information grows with the project, and where digital participation not only allows for information, but also for consultation, up to virtual consultation rooms, as you can see in this picture. And what new possibilities will arise? Conduct a sensitivity analysis yourselves on alternatives in a report, real-time information, augmented reality, create support via social media, listen to the effect of noise-reducing measures. Techniques are already there. Integration is often possible and sometimes already underway. The possibilities are considerable and developments are going fast. And how much more fun is it to watch an animation or video instead of 500 pages of text? I would like to briefly show you two examples, an SEA of the National Aviation Policy Memorandum and an EIA of a dike improvement project. Both examples from the Netherlands, but there are many examples in all parts of the world, such as a water supply project in South Africa and a coastal protection project in the Philippines, and there are many more. Well, let's start with the SEA project. What you see here is the homepage of a project, and if you scroll down, you will find information about the project. And in this case, also the possibilities to go directly to certain information via interactive visuals. In this case, a slider is available with all the airports in the Netherlands. And at the bottom of the page, there is a footer with information that is visible on all pages with a disclaimer, privacy statement, contact information. When I go back to the top of the page, there is a menu to navigate to different reports. And in this case, there are 4 different publications. Let's have a look at the non-technical summary. Each chapter can be accessed by via the navigation on the left. And let's have open it here. And here you see, for instance, the comparison table for different alternatives. Icons indicate the expected effects for each of the criteria, and by hovering over this with the mouse, you can quickly see what each of the criteria mean. So that makes it much more the information much more accessible. A final point in this example is the fact that we create a PDF of each of the reports, and we create that PDF from the digital content in which the interactive content has been handled in a smart way. And in this way, you can the information can be archived for a longer period of time without having to host the information over a couple of years. The second example is about a dike improvement. Here again, a homepage with information about the project. This homepage also has an interactive overview map of the project, and of course the footer at the bottom of the page again. And in addition to the EIA, this project also has a number of permit applications. So there are 7 different documents in this example. Let's open the EIS. And visual means were again used in this EIA, such as the use of animations to explain, in this case, the failure mechanisms of a dike. Let's see if I can find an example from that. Yeah, here's one example. One of the four, I think there are 4 different animations. If I open it, you can see that we used animations to explain how the fail mechanisms of a dike works. Let's see. In the EIA includes also a map atlas in which the reader can zoom in and out and switch map layers on and off. Let's show you that. So I can zoom in and out of the whole project here, and let's make it a little bit bigger. I can switch on and off different layers of the project. Although there are many more examples, the 2 examples show how in the past 2 years impact statements have already been brought into proceedings in the Netherlands in a digital interactive form. How such a thing can be done in the most attractive way is now further shown by Tom. Tom, let's see if you can take over. Stop share, yeah.
Yes, from here on, I will take over the webinar with part 3, which is all about using visualizations. In this first part of my part of the webinar, I will have a look at this report that is on my screen, because we used all sorts of visualizations combined to show kind of a portfolio of the possibilities. And the first one I would like to show to you is, if I go a little bit deeper into this report, I can go to this 3D GIS model that works completely with all the functionalities that you might know from interactive maps. And zooming in on this paint factory allows you or a stakeholder or a client to click on elements and read what is actually happening in that paint factory.
Sorry, Tom, just to interrupt, we can't see your screen yet, so just making sure you press screen share.
Very, very good for the reminder. Sorry, thank you.
Perfect.
Very brief recap. I opened up this report and I only clicked on this thing so far and the next page. So I hope we didn't miss too much. Thanks for notifying, Ethne. In this case, you see a 3D map being loaded of a paint factory. And this has been used in a permitting process for the paint factory to alter its structure on the inside, and the public and all stakeholders were allowed and could visit the paint factory in 3D, click on elements, and get actual pop-ups with information from that specific model. Another example that I would like to show to you is also a 3D model, but in this case, it is from the Autodesk side of the engineering world, where we have this office building. This is an office building generated in Autodesk. And what is nice about this visualization is that it's more than just the looks. It actually also has the data, once again, stored in the model. And this is also a nice benefit of having these digital kind of reports, in which you can have much more layers of information and much more detailed information in your visualizations. The next examples that I would like to show are in this other chapter, which is called e-participation. In this page, the first thing that I would like to show you is a timeline in which you can have multiple events stacked on top of each other, or over years or over a few hours only. And in those events, you can involve or inform the audience about upcoming meetings, maybe deadlines when policies are going to be published, and announce maybe next phases of your projects. What else you can do is have real interaction with your stakeholders. You can ask all sorts of questions, like a closed question, this one, for example. A little bit further down is an open question where you can type an answer, and save it. And finally, you can also pinpoint on the map. You get the same pop-up, and you can, for example, pinpoint the new location for a bus stop. All sorts of tools to make you really interact with your stakeholders along the entire process, instead of at specific publication dates or publication stages. The last page I want to show you from this example is a virtual tour. Paul showed briefly a video of one virtual tour. This is one that we have incorporated in this demo report. A virtual tour can basically be filled up with all sorts of visualizations, like a poster here on the left, or even a small device that you can open up with a poster. And something that you might have seen right now is that there's this banner at the lower part. It might be a little bit too small to read, but it tells me that not everything in this visualization is fully accessible for those who have to make use of screen readers to get the information. And the reporting that we use has all sorts of options to make sure that also those people can access the same type of information. In this case, there's a link here that says follow the link to the alternative article. And by clicking on it, I will go to a different article in which the same information is all written out with the right structure. So also regarding web accessibility guidelines, everything you do in such a digital report can be made fully accessible. That was my part of the front end of an EIA report. I would like to have a very short moment also with you in the more technical side of an EIA report to go to what we call the back end, because most of the people who visit our webinars always want to know a little bit of how it works also before they, to understand the whole concept. I have that on my next tab. This is the same reporting, but now I can log in if I press very carefully here at the top without stopping the share screen. Right on top of it. Oh, let me do it differently. Sorry for the, yeah, this little button I need to access. I go to the backend of this report. This is the backend of a reporting. I have selected my folder for today. That's fine. Let's have a quick tour of how I'm going to work with this document. First thing is that I have to upload a new document to the system. I can simply use a Word file from my computer and store it inside this box. It gives me quite some options. I want to have it as a new menu with a 2 and a new report with a 2, and I continue this uploading process. You can simply click continue, continue. Everything is set by default correct. And after what is maybe 1 minute, my document is uploaded into this EIA report. And my next step is to have a first look at what I have uploaded. So my next step will be to connect it also to my report on the front side. Let's select webinar and select it over here, report 2, save and save, and make it available as a button at the top of my page by enabling it here, the webinar one in navigation, save and save. If I now refresh the page, the front page, I have this little drop down and I can already see the material that I just uploaded. The same 5 chapters that were in my document are all also in the online environment. So getting your material in goes quick, and you can do synchronizations and also upload hundreds of pages at one go. Now I have to do the magic trick again to get back. No. I'm not used to Zoom. Okay, let's head back to the backend and make a few minor changes to what we have uploaded. I can simply do that in my article. In this first one, I'm going to make use of a visualization that uses a slider on top of 2 pictures. Comparison slider in. Let's kick out these 2 placeholders because we don't need them. But add our 2 pictures. And once I have done that, I have the option, for example, to tick off this comment that was still left there to compare the images. And there's a nice workflow that allows you to follow the 4 I's principle before you can publish your materials. Let's hit save over here. A few more changes I would like to make in the second one, and then I want to show the results directly on the front end. In this chapter, it is about using a Autodesk model. I have one over here, this little block. I leave it somewhere, for example, here at the top. And by selecting a Autodesk model from my report, I can show it directly afterwards in the front end. Paul also mentioned that you can create PDFs out of your EIA report, but of course a Autodesk model will not work in a normal PDF, maybe in very special PDFs, but if you have long PDFs, you don't want to have it too heavy. So this reporting structure that we use has also the option to include and exclude elements in various channels. And in this case, the Autodesk will be excluded from PDF, but I have provided this extra little text here that says, in our online report, an Autodesk model is presented. Follow the link to view the model. This piece of text, I don't want to see it on my web digital reporting. I want to see it only in my PDF. So I can simply exclude it from those channels and make sure only in the PDF this piece of text will be used. And by using this effectively, you can guarantee that all the information in your PDFs and your website are identical or at least referring to each other where they are not. Very nice check to have that in control. Let's save the page. one quick scan at the front end again. Oh, I have to do the annoying trick. Sorry for that already. Let's have a look at our webinar. This is the slider that we just created, pictures in a slider tool. And in the second chapter, we will see that same office building we actually saw earlier in my part 3 of our webinar. So that's what you can see over here. Two last small things I would like to point out before it's the end of my part of the webinar. I have to do the trick again, sorry. And then go to the backend. And that is that you can quickly see also the version control of everything you do in the iReport. So for example, this first chapter where I made that slider, I can see my upload date, I can see the change date, and I can see exactly what has happened, and I can roll back when needed. Very powerful way to really keep in check with your version levels, with your audit trails, and whatever people have been doing to the report in time. So that is a very strong and powerful tool as well. And the last thing is the PDF that Paul mentioned. If I go to the reports part, I have them here, the report C2. This was actually my dry demo from this morning. I should have removed it. I want to make one change and then I export it, and then we can have a look at it. This is the raw structure that it made already during my import. If I open up this first cover, I can select the cover sheet. I select the logo on top of my PDF, save it and save it. And I can click on the export button over here. And right now the system will make a computer generated PDF. Oh, it goes faster than I was expecting. And it contains all the blocks that it can present in a PDF. So if we go through this one, we have our logo, we have the front page, and we'll have a table of content. We have some text here. We have the little text here that we put into the Word file, and the link that will bring us to visualization, and all the other chapters in which I didn't do some changes today, but I could have done it if I had more time to show you the backend, of course. And that is in a nutshell the highlights that I would like to show you from both the front end and the back end of the iReport. So on the front end, the visualizations like 3D and consultation rooms, and in that back end, things like the version control, the 4 eyes principle with like publishing levels, but also the PDF and how you can work with those multi-channel systems in this digital reporting manner. That was my part of our webinar. I will stop sharing now and say thanks for listening, and please put your questions in the therefore appointed question box. The public bodies accept the whole digital reporting, or do they still rely on the PDFs that you can extract from it?
Well, we have in proceedings now a couple of formal EIAs, but as Tom showed, we always also bring in the PDF. So I haven't heard from them what they see as the main document. They use both, and at least for archiving legislation, the PDF is also necessary. So that case, what we do now is make a combination. But what we are aiming for is that especially stakeholders and the wider public are able to get access to the information, and that we use as much visual information as possible, so that the information is much more understandable. That's one of the things, one of the goals we try to reach.
Great, thank you, Paul. Hopefully you can hear me okay now. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
Perfect. So the next question is, how do you incorporate baseline data in digital EIA? And Tom, maybe you're best placed to answer this one.
Well, there's several ways of incorporating all sorts of data in the iReport. In this case, when you talk about baseline data, of course, the measurements before you do some changes or like your gathering of data. I think the best example was that dike improvement plan, where they made this entire atlas with all the existing layers and all the existing data that they had before the project. But there's also ways to use tables and graphs to work with your numerical data in and over time. Yeah.
Great, thanks for that, Tom. Have you found that the digital EIA means that the EIA assessment reports are any shorter?
I don't think so. We still have to do the same sort of work. So we still have to do the normal, go through all the alternatives, create the alternatives, go through the alternatives, do the assessment. So the noise calculations and the air quality work still has to be done. But the way how you provide that information in a report, in layered information, makes it that the main report can be shorter and contains more visual information, and then in layered information you get the extra parts that is often more for the specialists, etc. And then people are it's easier for people to go through the main message. That's what we try to do. But in I think that there is no information missing, except for that you can leave out a lot of pages often when you create a very good visual alternative for it. So there was one example that I showed with the animations for the dike improvement project, and we tried to explain that in wording, but for people that are no experts in the field, it's really hard, and we needed 8 pages of text, and we could leave them out because of those 4 different animations. So that's how it works.
Makes a lot of sense. Thanks, Paul. And finally, just time for one last question, just to sneak this one in. How long did it take you to develop this tool, and does it cost the end client more?
Well, in fact, it don't take a lot more time, or I can say it doesn't take any more time, because we still have to create what I just said. We still have to create the information for do the assessment. And Tom showed just yet how quick you can upload a document. This was, I think, Tom, that was a document of maybe 20 pages, but uploading a document of 200 pages it takes the same time. Of course, in further finalize the document also takes a little bit of time, but it's not that much. And I think there are a lot of bigger impact assessments done, sometimes taking over 1 or 2 years time. I think you have to think about maybe between 2 and 10,000 pounds more to do it in this way. It depends really on how big the project is, but it's really not that expensive. I think we have up and running now, I think 200 different projects, Tom, isn't it? Yeah, so a lot. Yeah.
And to connect to the first part of the question, how long did it take you to develop this? The backbone of the system was already existing, and we put on top of that our own creativity in terms of types of visualizations, the template, the branding, everything. And that was a process that from the start we could already use it, but we have improved it in the last maybe 2.5 years to make it fully compliant to our wishes and needs. So it was from functional to superior, almost like in 2.5 years, to say. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And I wonder if just a quick answer to this final question that's just popped in, which is, does the tool allow collaboration or access for the whole EIA consultant when you have different technical teams working on the same project?
Yes, you can specify in the back end so many things in terms of user rights. You can make dedicated teams work on dedicated sections without invading each other's spaces, and there's a lot of possibilities in that. Even if you have like very strict projects with like non-disclosure agreements, you can make it very, very tailored in the back end and segmented, so you can guarantee that no one sees material before it's ready to be published.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you, Paul and Tom, for answering all those questions and for giving such a good presentation. I think that was really interesting for all of us to see the back end as well as the front end for that. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you to all of our attendees as well for logging in. I hope you found that beneficial and informative. Don't forget to record your attendance at this webinar on the IES CPD tool. As I mentioned, this webinar has been recorded and will be made available on demand. The next webinar will be an IAQM webinar looking at mitigating air pollution exposure to young children, and you can register for this on our website. So thank you once again to our great speakers, and thanks to all of you. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you.